Hi guys, it's Quinn. If you enjoy my content, click the like button. The YouTube algorithm is strange and the engagement helps tremendously. Thanks guys. Once, mankind looked up at the night sky, at the stars shining in the black abyss, and they called them gods. Eventually we realized that in actuality, our own sun was just like each of those billions of stars out there in the darkness. It only took one leap of thought for someone to ask the question, if each of those stars are suns just like ours, do they have planets just like ours as well? And if they have planets, then could there be life like us on other worlds? In my last video, A Brief History of Space Travel in Science Fiction, we discussed Lucian's second work, True History, which depicts Lucian's journey through outer space, where he encounters alien life forms. We also mentioned Voltaire's 1752 story, MicroMegas, which centers around a giant alien who goes on a journey throughout the universe. The fact that we have a work dating back to the year 300 AD depicting aliens shows that the idea that humans are not alone in the universe is just as ancient as the idea of traveling through space. Cosmic pluralism is the specific term for what I'm describing here. It is the idea that there are many inhabited worlds beyond ours. Galileo didn't develop the heliocentric model of our solar system until the early 17th century. That means humans had been thinking about life on other worlds even before it became clear that the Earth revolved around the sun. In actuality, humans have been discussing the idea of general cosmic pluralism since as early as the time of Greek philosopher Anaximander, who lived from 610 BC to 546 BC. Anaximander supposed that infinite worlds appeared and disappeared in cycles of birth and destruction. Cosmic pluralism was adopted by the atomists of that age, who believed that everything in the universe could be broken down into divisible parts known as atoms. It was reported that when Anaxarchus, a Greek philosopher of the school of Democritus, told Alexander the Great that there were infinite worlds, he wept, for he had yet to conquer even one. The idea of the existence of alien life in the direct sense, in contrast to general cosmic pluralism, actually became possible with the introduction of the heliocentric model of the solar system. Due to this, literature involving extraterrestrial life became popular in the 1600s and the 1700s. French author Bernard Le Bovier de Fontenelle, I think I'm pronouncing that right, published Conversations on the Plurality of Worlds, which went on to be thought of as one of the first major works of the Age of Enlightenment. The book discusses the heliocentric model of the universe, as well as the possibility of alien life on other worlds. It wasn't, however, until humankind developed an understanding of interstellar space in the late 19th century and the early 20th century that the idea of alien life on other worlds really took off in fiction. Though the first galaxies were actually identified by astronomer Charles Messier in the 18th century, he did not know what they were. In fact, until about 100 years ago, the Milky Way was believed to be only a few thousand light years across. We didn't actually begin to comprehend the actual size of the universe until 1925. On January 1st of that year, Edwin Powell Hubble announced that he had discovered the existence of galaxies, countless giant clusters of stars out there in space. Our solar system was merely one of endless solar systems within just one of endless galaxies. How many of those galaxies had stars that had planets? How many of those planets contained life? But even before this, humans had already begun to develop ideas about what alien life forms would be like. It would be strange to talk about this subject without mentioning one of the most famous alien science fiction books of all time. In 1898, H.G. Wells published what will become one of the most famous works in all of science fiction. No one would have believed, in the last year of the 19th century, that this world was being watched keenly and closely by intelligences greater than man's, and yet as mortal as his own. That as men busied themselves about their various concerns, They were scrutinized and studied, perhaps almost as narrowly as a man with a microscope might scrutinize the transient creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. The War of the Worlds tells the story of a Martian invasion of Earth from the perspective of a writer of philosophy who lived in southeast England with his wife. He is never actually named. In the novel, a series of explosions on the surface of Mars gains the attention of the scientific community. Sometime after this, a cylinder lands near the protagonist's home. Within the cylinder were bear-sized aliens with oily gray skin and large darkly colored eyes. Those who have never seen a living Martian can scarcely imagine the strange horror of its appearance. The peculiar V-shaped mouth with its pointed upper lip, the absence of brow ridges, the absence of a chin beneath the wedge-like lower lip, the incessant quivering of this mouth, the gorgon groups of tentacles, the tumultuous breathing of the lungs in a strange atmosphere, the evident heaviness and painfulness of movement due to the greater gravitational energy of the Earth. Above all, the extraordinary intensity of the immense eyes were at once vital, intense, and human, crippled and monstrous. It is obvious to the narrator that the alien life forms are not accustomed to the environment of Earth, as they have trouble breathing in Earth's atmosphere and have difficulty adapting to the gravity of Earth. The grotesque alien life forms begin attacking the locals. Their technology is far superior to any technology found on Earth. Their tripod fighting machines had powerful heat rays and also shot out poisonous black gas. After laying assault on the planet Earth and seeming undefeatable, the aliens begin dropping dead. They had not become accustomed to the microcosmos of the Earth and ended up being defeated by common Earth pathogens and scattered about it, some in their overturned war machines, some in the now rigid handling machines. A dozen of them, stark and silent, laid in a row, were the Martians, dead, slain by the putrefactive and diseased bacteria against which their systems were unprepared, slain as the red weed was being slain, slain after all man's devices had failed by the humblest thing God in his wisdom had put upon the earth. The War of the Worlds was initially published in a serialized form in Pearson's magazine in 1897, and then later reprinted in a 1927 issue of the magazine Amazing Stories. H.G. Wells in this story appears to be using the Martian invasion of Earth to make commentary on the horrors of real-world British colonization of Africa, which had been going on for many decades at the time of the book's publication. Already dozens of African territories had been claimed by the British Empire by 1900. On the reverse side of this, we have Robert Heinlein's 1959 book, Starship Troopers. In Starship Troopers, the human military faces off against insect-like alien life forms. They called them bugs. Heinlein's view in Starship Troopers is based on the idea of claiming the frontier. In essence, the book suggested that in order to survive, humankind would have to continue to push the frontier violently, even at the expense of the indigenous, in this case, insect-like aliens. It's been pointed out that Heinlein seems to be using the aliens as a metaphor for various indigenous groups of Earth, mainly the people of communist countries. Essentially, the story itself is based on social Darwinism, specifically the view of society as a struggle for survival based on militaristic force. In direct opposition to the work of Isaac Asimov, who famously states in his Foundation saga, "Violence is the last refuge of the incompetent," Heinlein insists that some conflicts can only be resolved through violence. Violence, naked force, has settled more issues in history than has any other factor. It almost seems as if Heinlein is deliberately contradicting Asimov here. Much of Heinlein's viewpoint came from his own belief that the United States government at the time was being too easy on China and the Soviet Union. Heinlein believed that violence was often, in fact, an effective method for settling conflict. When you vote, you are exercising political authority. you're using force. And force, my friends, is violence, the supreme authority from which all other authorities are derived. Though the War of the Worlds and Starship Troopers are making seemingly opposite statements about colonialism, they both portray alien life in a similar way. The aliens are otherized, animal-like and grotesque. They are inhuman, something other than us. Because they are portrayed as something other than us, the reader isn't really inclined to view aliens with any sort of empathy. They are the enemy, the invaders, the others. The animal-like characteristics further help drive home the point. Still, it is not uncommon for aliens in fiction to have characteristics of animals, but also sometimes the opposite was the case. Unlike the aliens that appear in The War of the Worlds and Starship Troopers, many early works depicted alien beings as similar or identical to humans. Edgar Rice Burroughs' Mars series, which was first serialized in 1912, depicted Martians who looked almost identical to human beings, but with variant skin tones and sometimes extra limbs. In Ursula K. Le Guin's Heinous Cycle books, which began being published in 1966 and continued throughout the 60s and 70s, the idea of an ancient race of beings depositing similar DNA throughout the cosmos is used to explain the humanoid lifeforms that appear throughout the series. Obviously, parallel evolution of the same exact species was virtually impossible, so the idea of a singular race seeding genetically similar life throughout the universe made a lot of sense. This is also similar to the explanation given in the Star Trek universe to explain the similarities between the inhabitants of the Milky Way. Star Trek began airing in 1966, but it wasn't explained why many alien life forms and humans are similar until the second series, Star Trek The Next Generation. Humans, Vulcans, Klingons, and many others share similar characteristics. It is revealed in the 1993 episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, The Chase, that all humanoid aliens had originated from a single species. The Klingons and the Cardassians reject this knowledge when it's given, insistent on racial superiority, while the Romulan captain, however, expresses to Captain Picard that perhaps the two species are not as different as they seem. Even when aliens don't necessarily look like humans, alien races in science fiction are often used as a way for writers to make analogs for various social and political groups of people in their own societies. For instance, in Star Trek The Next Generation, while the Federation represents a socialist utopia, the alien lifeforms known as the Ferengi, who were originally intended to replace the Klingons as the main adversary of the Federation, represented the capitalist of old Earth. Capitalism no longer existed on Earth during this time, due to the fact that scarcity had been eliminated through technology. The Ferengi are repeatedly depicted as morally bankrupt and willing to do almost anything to turn a profit. The depiction of capitalism in Star Trek The Next Generation is largely due to the creator, Gene Roddenberry's strong anti-capitalist views. Gene Roddenberry considered himself a humanist. He rejected religion from a young age and was outspoken about his views mostly, and he made it clear that Star Trek was his vision of the future. Now let's take a closer look at the humanoid aliens known as the Cardassians. The Cardassians were meant to represent fascists. They were a xenophobic race, quick to torture captured enemies. Cardassian individuals put service of the state above all else, even their families. They valued strength above most things, and resented the weak. Society operated based on a strict hierarchy, and they were known for genetic engineering, which the Federation generally frowned upon. Inserting certain characteristics and viewpoints into alien species was often a way in which writers were able to make criticisms about certain ideologies and belief systems without overtly doing so, though one could argue that Star Trek was never the most subtle at doing this. I think one of the reasons humans keep telling stories about aliens is simply this: we are afraid of aliens. What happens if the aliens are not friendly, Like the Vulcans from Star Trek, what if they are hostile? What if we cannot defend against them? What if an alien life form conquers the Earth and we are no longer the dominant species on our own home planet? Arthur C. Clarke deals with the idea of an alien invasion in a very interesting way in his 1953 book, Childhood's End. It begins in the late 20th century, with huge alien spaceships suddenly appearing above Earth's major cities. They announce that they will take control of the planet in order to prevent the extinction of humankind. Humanity has no way of resisting. Mostly the alien life forms who become known as the overlords do not intervene in human affairs, but many remain suspicious. Early on in the book, Secretary General of the UN manages to see the true form of the alien overlords who have promised to reveal themselves in 50 years after humankind had become accustomed to their presence on Earth. What he sees terrifies him to the point where he never speaks of what he saw. The overlords do indeed foster a new era of prosperity, a golden age for humanity, but at the expense of human creativity. Some argued that the overlords had intentionally stifled human ingenuity, causing society to become stagnant. The overlords, as they said they would, revealed themselves 50 years after their initial arrival on planet Earth. They had the appearance of demons. They are horned, with cloven hooves, wings and barbed tails. It was a tribute to the overlord's psychology and to their careful years of preparation that only a few people fainted. Yet there could have been fewer still, anywhere in the world, who did not feel the ancient terror brush for one awful instant against their mind before reason banished it forever. There was no mistake. The leathery wings, the horns, the barbed tail, all were there. The most terrible of all legends had come to life out of the unknown past, yet now it stood smiling in ebon majesty, with the sunlight gleaming upon its tremendous body, and with a human child resting trustfully on either arm. Eventually one character, Jan Rodrix, managed to sneak aboard and stow away on one of the Overlord supply ships, and ends up journeying more than 40 light years to their home planet. Though only a few weeks pass for him, more than 80 years pass on Earth. More than 100 years after the overlords arrived on the planet, human children started to demonstrate extraordinary mental abilities, including telekinesis and clairvoyance. The overlords eventually reveal their true purpose on Earth. They serve what they call the Overmind, and they had been sent to the planet by this cosmic intelligence to aid in the evolution of the human species. We believe, it is only a theory, that the Overmind is trying to grow, to extend its powers and its awareness of the universe. By now it must be the sum of many races, and long ago it left the tyranny of matter behind. It is conscious of intelligence everywhere. When it knew that you were almost ready, it sent us here to do its bidding, to prepare you for the transformation that is now at hand. The human race, as they knew it, was coming to an end. The next stage of humanity would no longer consist of individual minds. The children being born would share one mind and eventually join the Overmind, which was made up by many ancient civilizations who had shed their material existence. It is explained that the overlords cannot join with the Overmind. The character George Gregson refers to them as trapped in an evolutionary cul-de-sac, unable to advance any further. Here was a great and noble race, in almost every way superior to mankind, yet it had no future, and it was aware of it. The Overlord served as a bridge species, which fostered a race until it could eventually join with the Overmind. Eventually, children stopped being born on Earth, and the hundreds of millions of them present are taken to a separate continent. The old human race dies off as the new human race's final transformation begins. Only Jan Rodrix is left to witness the final transformation of the children and the death of the Earth. He is the last remaining Homo sapien. The Earth's atoms are consumed, as the children shed their physical forms, transforming into a giant column of light which dissolves into space. Jan is there as the human species ends forever in a glorious flash of light. There goes the river. No change in the sky though. I can hardly breathe. Strange to see the moon still shining up there. I'm glad they left it, but it will be lonely now. The light from beneath me, inside the earth, shining upward through the rocks, the ground, everything, growing brighter, brighter, blinding. Childhood's End is not a typical example of what people think of when they hear alien takeover or alien invasion. There are no giant weapons or science fiction battles. The book is philosophical and existential, but also hopeful in some way. The overlords are the shepherds of the ending of humanity, but it's only the ending of humanity as we once were. It is an evolution of the species into something higher, just as we evolved from apes. Of course, there are countless stories depicting alien life forms at this point in time. I've had to be highly selective about the stories I chose to highlight in this video, otherwise this video will be way too long. The idea of extraterrestrial life is an idea that humans can't seem to let go of. Are we alone in the universe? What would happen if we ever made contact with an alien race? Would they be friendly? Would they share their technology and culture with us? Or would they be hostile, intent on dominating or exterminating us and harvesting the resources of our planet for themselves? The idea of other intelligent life out there is intriguing and terrifying and wondrous all at the same time. And there is also something strangely sad about the thought that out of all the worlds out there, that ours would be the only one with life. Nowadays, it's more common than ever for people to believe that alien life exists out there somewhere as merely a matter of probability. The famous Drake equation was meant to calculate the amount of inhabited worlds that existed in the universe, and according to it, the universe should be full of life. Even still, in reality, it is unlikely that we will ever encounter life that has evolved outside of our planet. The universe is simply too big, and the distances between the stars simply too great. Even at the speed of light, it would take countless human generations to reach other solar systems, let alone other galaxies. So all we really have is our stories. In science fiction, we can explore the what-ifs of extraterrestrial existence. What if we could reach them? What if they could reach us? What if they are just like us? What if they are nothing like us? Is alien life even something that we would be able to recognize as life in the first place? Everything that evolved on Earth is in some way similar, carbon-based, sharing genetics. What would something of an entirely different evolutionary tree even look like? These are all questions that science fiction authors have attempted to answer in their stories throughout the decades. And who knows, maybe one day we will make contact. Hopefully, we'll be mature enough as a species to deal with such a thing. Now, I for one have always loved the concept of alien life forms. I love reading books about aliens. A weird one that I really love is Stephen King's Dreamcatcher. Such an odd and strange book. Not the best ending, but still pretty cool. And hey, it's Stephen King. Let me know what you guys' favorite alien books are. I'm always looking for recommendations. Heck, I'll even take movies or TV shows. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Make sure you like and subscribe for more Quinn's ideas.